She looked me in the eye and said, "There wasn't enough space. We had to cancel one seat. It was Mother's Day. My name, missing from the reservation. My chair, pulled before I ever sat down." They smiled for a photo while I stood outside the restaurant window, holding a card I'd written for her. I saw my grandson lift a glass of apple juice. She toasted herself. That's fine. She can drink to her own reflection. But I hope she tastes what she poured. Sunday mornings used to start with a knock. Tiny fists. Bare feet. "Grandma B. Pancakes." He'd climb into my lap before I could put the kettle on. Flour in his hair. Syrup on my robe. I never minded. Back then, I was part of the rhythm. Eggs. Laughter. Cartoons humming in the background. She'd sit at the kitchen table with a to-do list and a latte. He'd tug at her sleeve. She'd smile barely. It was quiet, but it was enough. I didn't need much. Just the sound of life brushing up against mine. When they bought their new house across town, I understood. Bigger yard. Better schools. Farther away. They promised I'd still be part of everything. She called it our family circle. But it wasn't long before the circle closed. No more pancake Sundays. Just photos. Of matching pajamas I didn't buy. Pumpkin patches I wasn't invited to. I double-tapped them like a stranger. Heart emoji. Thumbs up. Swallowed pride. The first Christmas, they came by. 15 minutes. He napped in the car. She wore heels and a look that said, "We're in a rush." I gave her a scarf I'd knitted in secret. She nodded. Said, "Oh, you still do that." She left it on the chair. My son. He was polite, but distracted. He texted during dinner. Left early to beat the traffic. There was no traffic. I checked. I wasn't upset. Not then. They were young. Busy. Building. I told myself love just sounds different now. Less phone calls. More tagged posts. The second year, Mother's Day was shared. Brunch. Her mother. Me. 2 bouquets of flowers. Mine smaller. Wrapped in gas station plastic. Still, I smiled. Still, I sat. Still, I passed the butter. Because that's what you do when you love someone. You sit quietly while they forget you. One Tuesday, I stopped by unannounced. The doorbell rang 3 times. She opened it, phone in hand. Said, "Oh, I wish you'd texted first." I held a pot of her favorite lilies. She took them without a word. I stood in the doorway and saw my grandson in the playroom. He looked up, waved, then went back to his screen. That was the last time I showed up without warning. Birthdays got shorter. Calls got fewer. The group chat. Quiet. One day I sent a message. Thinking of hosting Sunday supper. Chicken roast. Let me know. No one responded. Not even seen. I reread the text the next morning. It still had that little gray bubble beside it. Unopened. I deleted it. Not out of anger. Just release. Because I was tired of setting places for people who wouldn't sit. I kept making the roast, though. Every Sunday. 3 plates. Just in case. 1 for me. 1 for my son. 1 for the idea of him. I used the good china. Even if no one showed up. Especially then. Because I'd learned something bitter but honest. Loneliness isn't the absence of people. It's the presence of silence where laughter used to live. On quiet nights, I still look through the photo albums. The real ones. Not filtered or cropped. There we were. Camping trips. T-ball games. Popsicles melting on the porch. Back when I was still called first. Back when I was needed. I wasn't truly lonely. Just quietly replaced. That's a different kind of ache. Slower. More polite. But deeper. Like being erased gently. With a soft cloth. Until only the outline remains. I didn't fight it. Didn't push. Didn't demand my seat. Because I believed love should never have to beg for space. So I folded laundry. Trimmed my roses. Wrote birthday cards weeks early. Watched from the margins. A quiet witness to my own fading. And on Mother's Day, I ironed my blouse. Brushed my hair. Wrapped the gift. Even picked up a bottle of her favorite wine. I thought maybe this year. Maybe she remembered. I was wrong. But peace, real peace. It comes not when people remember you, but when you remember who you are. And that storm was just beginning to form. It started with a text. Simple. Harmless. Primavera looks packed today. Your family's celebrating something. Sent from my neighbor, Ruth. She was having lunch down the street. I paused. Primavera. That's where they said we might go months ago. Nothing confirmed. But I'd kept the day open. Just in case. I glanced at my phone. No new messages. Group chat silent. I scrolled back. 3 weeks ago, I'd asked, "Any Mother's Day plans this year? Happy to bring dessert." No reply. Just a floating question in a room no one stayed in. Still, I smiled to myself. Maybe they forgot to respond. Maybe it was a surprise. Maybe. I opened Instagram. Not theirs. I knew better. She never added me. But the boutique's page was public. And there it was. A short video. 6 adults. 1 toddler in a high chair. A toast midair. Laughter, floral prints, gold forks. And there, a hand reaching to remove something from the table. A 7th place setting. Lifted, folded, quietly taken away by the waiter. They had prepared for 7. Then changed their minds. My chair. Cancelled. I watched it twice. Paused the moment the chair was wheeled back toward the hostess stand. The waiter bent down. Picked up a cloth napkin. I imagined it still warm. She smiled for the camera. My daughter-in-law. Holding a mimosa. Wearing the earrings I gave her last year. My son clinked his glass with hers. He looked proud. Or drunk. I couldn't tell. Their caption. Grateful for the women who make life beautiful. 2 hearts. #Mother's Day brunch. Women. Plural. But only one honored. I checked the tags. Her mother, her sister, her cousin. Even her best friend. My name? Nowhere. Not even a ghost. I set my phone down. Carefully. As if it might break something other than my heart. I walked to the kitchen. Poured tea I no longer wanted. The kettle hissed, angry on the stove. But everything else was still. The roast sat untouched in the oven. The table half set. Forks out. Napkins folded. A place card with my grandson's scribbled name. I turned off the oven. Took off my shoes. Sat down at the table anyway. I stared at the gift bag beside me. Gold tissue paper. Inside, a framed photo. The one he drew last year. Crayon hearts. Me plus Grandma B. Our names in crooked letters. I had it reprinted, framed in oak. Wrapped it with care. It sat there now. Still sealed. Still believing it mattered. I reached for the card I wrote for her. 3 sentences. Short. Sweet. Grateful. Not anymore. I opened it. Tore it in half. Then in half again. Each rip quieter than the last. Not anger. Not even sadness. Just done. The doorbell rang. Not real. Just memory. I imagined it. Little fists. Bare feet. Pancakes. Gone. I walked to the window. Pulled the curtain back an inch. The world moved outside like nothing had changed. Dogs walking. Sprinklers humming. A boy riding past on a bike. Life as usual. Mine paused. And then I saw it. The scarf. Hanging on the hook by the door. The one I gave her 2 Christmases ago. The one she left behind. Still folded. Still soft. Still mine. That's when it shifted. Not with shouting. Not with fire. But with stillness. Like when a tide changes, slowly, silently, and the whole ocean feels it. I closed the curtain. Walked to the table. Picked up the place card with my grandson's name. Folded it in half. Put it in the drawer. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't ask why. Because deep down, I already knew. The seat wasn't canceled by accident. It was erased on purpose. An erasure has a sound. It's not loud. It's a hush. A vacuum. An exhale that never gets refilled. The room was silent. But everything inside me was screaming. Not in rage. But in clarity. And clarity is colder than anger. Sharper. More honest. That moment didn't break me. It named me. Not Mom. Not Grandma B. Not mother-in-law. Just invisible. But I wouldn't stay that way. Because something shifted. Right there. Next to the untouched roast. The canceled chair. The still folded scarf. I saw myself. Fully. For the first time in a long while. And I remembered who I was. Before they forgot. It didn't happen all at once. It never does. Little things. Paper cuts of the heart. So small you almost ignore the sting. The first was her tone. Not sharp, just thinner. Like butter scraped too wide on cold toast. She used to call me Mama B. Now it was just Barbara. Clean. Formal. Like I was the bank teller, not the woman who held her baby while she slept. At the baby shower, I remember brushing her hair back from her face while she threw up in my bathroom. Back then, I thought it meant something. I thought I'd earned a place. But one autumn, they came to dinner. I made sweet potato pie, her favorite. Passed it across the table. She blinked. Oh, I don't really eat that anymore. No thank you. No smile. Just a dismissal like a passing breeze. I told myself she was tired. New baby. New pressures. That's all. Then it was my grandson's 3rd birthday. They had a party at the park. I was told the day after. There were too many kids. You wouldn't have liked it. That's what my son said. Said it like a kindness. I nodded. Baked cupcakes anyway. Frosted them in silence. Brought them to my neighbor's grandkids. They hugged me like I mattered. A few weeks later, I dropped off a package. A little hand-knit blanket. Soft gray. His initials stitched into the corner. It showed back up in a garage sale 3 months later. Still folded. Still tagged. $5. I didn't say a word. I picked it up. Paid for it. Took it home like a child you never stop loving. That was the day I stopped making gifts. On Thanksgiving, I was asked to bring pie. Pumpkins store-bought. Nothing too homemade, she texted. It's easier for cleanup. I obeyed. Placed it gently on the counter when I arrived. Hours passed. They never served it. I watched her mother pull out a different pie from the fridge. Apple. Homemade. Praised with clapping. Mine sat untouched. I took it home. Still sealed. Still warm. Christmas came. I brought my usual basket, jams, teas, shortbread. Wrapped it in gold ribbon. They opened gifts in the living room. Mine was set aside. I saw it still under the tree when I left. No one said thank you. No one noticed. I told myself it was the chaos. So many people. So many presents. That's all. I stopped bringing baskets. And then the photo. Hanging in their hallway. Framed in white wood. A family year in review collage. Smiling faces. Laughter frozen in squares. Holidays. Birthdays. First steps. I stared. I searched. I wasn't in any of them. I'd taken 2 of those photos. Held the camera. Crocheted the sweater. Erased. Still, I smiled. Still, I made excuses. One winter night, I messaged my son. Just to check in. Nothing heavy. Hope your week's going okay. Let me know if you need anything. He replied 2 days later. THX. Nothing else. I stared at that single word longer than I should have. Tried to stretch it into love. THX. Like I was an Uber driver. Or a spam call that didn't go through. I stared at the screen. Noticed something beneath my thumb. A text I'd sent the month before. An old photo of his dad. Never opened. Never even seen. That was when I started saving things just for me. I made soup. Froze it. Kept it in my freezer instead of delivering it to them. I stopped checking their boutique's page. Stopped liking their posts. Stopped hoping for a wave from the window. Because the pain wasn't in what they said. It was in what they didn't. Didn't invite. Didn't thank. Didn't see. I sat at their table for years. Smiling politely while my name faded from their lips. A friend once asked, "Why do you keep showing up?" I answered without thinking. Because they're my family. But that night, I lay awake wondering. Were they still mine if I was no longer theirs? I remembered a moment. Years ago. Late night. Their baby had colic. She called me crying. I drove over in slippers. Held him while she showered. Made tea. Rocked him for hours. She hugged me tight. Said, "I don't know what I'd do without you." Now she does. Now she lives just fine without me. That's the part that cuts deepest. Not the cruelty, but the indifference. Because hate still implies passion. But they didn't hate me. They just forgot I mattered. And somehow, that hurts worse. It didn't break me, though. Not yet. I just folded myself a little smaller. Breathed a little quieter. Loved from the sidelines. Until the seat disappeared. Until I was no longer even considered. Not an oversight. A message. And I finally received it. The chicken was dry. I made it anyway. Same recipe as always. Rosemary. Lemon. Salted skin, crisp golden. 3 plates sat waiting. White porcelain. Polished silverware. Napkins folded like lilies. 1 chair for me. 1 for my son. 1 for the little boy who used to call me Sunshine Hands. I lit the candles. Dimmed the lights. Poured a glass of wine. Not because I believed they'd walk in, but because I used to believe they would. That belief was harder to throw away than the food. The gift bag still sat on the buffet. Gold. Ribbon curling down the side. Inside, that framed crayon drawing. Me plus Grandma B. I looked at it. Looked through it. The house was so quiet, I could hear the tea clock ticking. 3 clicks past the hour. For since I sat down. None since the phone rang. I reached for the wine. Sipped. Let it burn a little. It helped me stay in my body. because my mind wanted to leave. It wanted to go back to the night he came home from college and fell asleep on my couch, still smelling like dorm room pizza and laundry detergent. I covered him with a quilt, watched his chest rise and fall, to the moment he placed that baby in my arms. Tiny, red-faced, already loud. I held him and whispered, "You are safe." Now I wondered if he ever remembered that. I stood up, walked to the hutch, opened the drawer beneath the old silver. And there it was, a paper crane, blue, faded with time. My son made it in 5th grade. Said it was for luck. I'd kept it for over 20 years. Moved it from drawer to drawer. Never thought to throw it away. I picked it up now. Held it like it still had wings. Then I saw the bracelet, tucked beside it. A charm bracelet. Each charm from a milestone. Tiny silver book for his graduation. Little house for their first mortgage. A heart engraved with Grandma B. That one came from her. I touched it. Cold. Still shining. Useless now. I put it on. Let it jingle as I poured more wine. Each sound, a memory trying to live again. I sat back down. Looked at the chair across from me. Empty. I stared. Long enough to imagine him sitting there. Fork in hand. Asking for seconds. Grinning like he used to. I blinked. He was gone. Just wood and cushion now. Just space. A void shaped like my son. I reached for the napkin. Unfolded it. Laid it across my lap. As if I was still trying to be civil. Tears didn't fall. I wished they would. Tears are release. This was clot. Something held inside. Too thick to move. I looked around. Saw my life arranged so carefully. Dustless. Quiet. Polite. And painfully. Unafraid to be empty. I stood. Took the plates away. One at a time. No slamming. No breaking. Just removal. I opened the oven. Took out the chicken. Put it in a Tupperware. For no one. Then I walked to my bedroom. Opened the closet. Pulled down the old photo album. Sat on the floor. Cross-legged. Like a girl again. I flipped through. Page by page. Birthdays. Snowmen. That one camping trip where it rained the whole time. Photos faded at the edges. Smiles still bright. Then I found it. A picture of me. Holding him. He couldn't have been more than 2. My eyes were tired. But happy. Hair pulled back. One hand under his legs, one around his tiny back. And in that photo, he's looking right at me. Not past me. Not through me. At me. Like I was his whole world. I traced his little face. Whispered, "Where did you go?" The silence didn't answer. But I felt it. The shift. The ache. The acceptance. That something had broken. Not with a bang. Not with betrayal. But with distance. Time. And choice. I sat on the floor with that album for a long while. Maybe an hour. Maybe 3. And when I finally closed it, I did it gently. Like burying something you still love. That night, I didn't brush my hair. Didn't finish the wine. Didn't turn on the porch light. I just climbed into bed. Still wearing that bracelet. Its charms clicked once as I turned off the lamp. Empty. Forgotten. Perfect. And then, darkness. I woke up early. Didn't hit snooze. Didn't check my phone. The bracelet was still around my wrist. Tangled slightly in the sleeve of my nightgown. I slid it off. Dropped it into the jewelry box. It didn't jingle this time. Just landed like truth. There was no speech. No kitchen confrontation. No shaking hands. Only decision. Cold. Clean. Long overdue. I boiled water. Black coffee today. No cream. No sweetness. There's a kind of clarity that arrives after disappointment. It doesn't need to talk. It just moves. I opened my filing cabinet. Pulled out the folder labeled Legacy. Inside, my will. Unchanged since my husband passed. Everything to my son. The house. The savings. The lake property he always assumed would be his. I read the pages slowly. Watched the ink as if it were venom I had once mistaken for love. Then I called Marlene. My attorney. Old friend from choir practice. Her voice was soft. "Whenever you're ready, Barbara." "I'm ready," I said. Just that. An hour later, I walked into her office with a list. 1 name removed. 2 added. 1, the local women's shelter, the same one I donated clothes to every winter. 2, an old friend's granddaughter, the only one who still sends handwritten thank you notes. And then I signed. Initialed. Folded my old life into a new one. She offered to witness the documents. I nodded. Not because I needed support, but because I needed the silence to have company. When it was done, I stood, shook her hand, walked out with nothing but my keys. Next stop, the bank. The account I set up for my grandson. Every Christmas, I added a little more. One day for college, for dreams, for love. But love should never come at the cost of self. And college, well, maybe he'll learn different lessons now. I closed the account, transferred the balance to the scholarship fund I'd been admiring for years. Named it after my mother, the one who taught me how to cook and how to walk away. The teller paused. "You're sure?" I smiled. "I'm finally sure." I left the bank lighter. Not freer, not yet, but no longer tethered to a gate that never opened. The wind picked up. I didn't flinch. Back at home, I opened the hallway closet, took down the box labeled boutique loan papers. 3 years ago, I co-signed her business loan. Quietly. No celebration. Just a handshake and a whispered thank you from her. She never mentioned it again. But the bank did. Every month. Every time she missed a payment, they called me, not her. And I always covered it. Quietly. That day, I made one more call. Had my name removed as guarantor. Had the boutique reassessed for collateral. If the debt came due, it would land where it belonged. Not on my back. I put the folder back in the drawer. Locked it. And then I did something no one would notice. But I would. I walked to the mailbox. Opened it. The nameplate read, Barbara Wells. Underneath, the Carter family. They asked to put their name there after moving. Said it made things simpler. I agreed. As always, that morning I peeled it off. Gently. Without ripping. I let the metal show through. Blank. Cold. Honest. Silent scene. No one saw it. No one heard it. But something shifted. Then I walked into the guest room. The one where my grandson used to nap. It still held toys. A little race car on the bookshelf. One sock under the bed. Books we used to read. I sat on the edge of the bed. Looked around. Not with grief. But with inventory. These things didn't belong to me anymore. They belonged to the version of me who waited. Who hoped. Who set plates that stayed empty. I placed the sock in a drawer. Closed it. Then I picked up the race car. Held it. And let it go. Dropped it in the donation bag. I didn't cry. Didn't smile. Just kept going. That afternoon, I took down the framed photo in the hallway. The one of their wedding. She had insisted I display it. Said, it makes the house feel more connected. But connection requires effort. Not obligation. I wrapped the photo in newspaper. Slid it into a box labeled return. Not with bitterness. With boundaries. Because sometimes love means knowing when you've given too much. When your silence has turned into self-erasure. And so I acted. Not in rage. But in clarity. I didn't call them. Didn't ask why. Didn't draft long texts they'd ignore. I just stopped. Stopped watering soil that had already gone dry. Stopped waiting for the phone to ring. Stopped explaining what they already knew and didn't care to change. My power didn't come from making noise. It came from no longer asking to be heard. I folded the guest room sheets. Put them in the closet. Vacuumed the hallway. Lit a candle. I didn't slam the door. I just closed it, finally. Have you ever stayed quiet just to keep the peace? What did it cost you? I thought I'd already found the worst of it. The empty seat. The quiet dismissals. The silences that grew louder than words. But real betrayal doesn't always scream. Sometimes it wears your name like a mask. It came in the form of a brown envelope. Plain. Sealed. Dropped through my mail slot on a Wednesday. No return address. No warning. Inside, a letter from the IRS. I read it twice. Then a third time. It said I had claimed childcare expenses for a dependent I never listed. A tax discrepancy. Flagged for audit. Dependent, my grandson. Claimed under my social security number. For the last 2 years. I sat very still. The envelope still warm from the sun. But the cold crept into my fingers. I hadn't filed anything like that. Hadn't written his name on a form since the day I opened his college account. It didn't make sense, until it did. I remembered something. A conversation at their kitchen counter. She was complaining about taxes. Said something about making things work. I nodded, distracted, stirring soup. She asked me for my full name that night. Even joked, Barbara Wells. What a strong name for a claim. I thought it was a compliment. Now I saw it for what it was. A setup. They'd used me. Filed under my identity. Saved money on their end. By staining mine. And it wasn't just illegal. It was intimate. They knew how I filed, where I kept my records. They'd been in my home. Held my trust like it was a credit card. I called the number on the notice. The woman on the other end asked if I was Grandma Barbara. I winced. Yes. My voice barely made it out. She explained gently. The claim was detailed. Receipt submitted. Signed electronically from my name. I closed my eyes. Felt the bracelet on my wrist again. The one I had taken off 2 mornings ago. I asked what address was used. She read it out. Their address. Not mine. My name. Their gain. I thanked her. Hung up. Felt the silence swallow me whole. It wasn't just theft. It was erasure. The final kind. They hadn't just forgotten me. They rewrote me. Like I was a tool. A resource. A box to check on a form. I stood and walked to the kitchen. Opened the drawer near the fridge. Where I kept old notes. Cards. Random bits of life. And there it was. I'd almost forgotten the drawing. The one I mailed with love, now used to steal my name. The crayon drawing. The one I'd framed. It wasn't just a picture. It was a copy. The original had been mailed to them. Months ago. With a letter. My handwriting soft and curved, like it used to be. In that letter I wrote, "In case you ever forget how much you're loved, here's a little reminder." I had signed it. Grandma B. Barbara Wells. My full name. Written in ink. Now I knew how they got it. Where the pieces came from. How the betrayal was born. A letter of love used to commit fraud. My hand trembled. But I wasn't crying. Not yet. I walked to the closet. Opened the old hope chest. The one with my mother's belongings. The few things I still kept. Her brooch wasn't there. The gold one. Pearl center. Handed to me the night she died. Gone. In its place, a typed label on an empty cushion. The same kind used in boutique display cases. I called the store. The girl on the phone said, "Oh yes. That brooch sold last month. From our vintage case. Rare piece." "How much?" I asked. She paused. $800. I hung up. This time I did cry. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just one tear. For my mother. For myself. For the woman who gave everything. Only to be itemized and liquidated. They didn't just forget me. They dismantled me. They hollowed me out and filled the space with forms and forgeries. I went to my room. Sat on the bed. The house humming with its usual quiet. But it sounded different now. More like shame. The kind that doesn't belong to the betrayed. But still lands there anyway. I reached under the bed. Pulled out the second box. The one I hadn't touched in years. Inside, a twin to the brooch they sold. I had found it years ago at an estate sale. Bought it as a spare. Just in case. Never told anyone. Not even her. I opened the lid. Held it in my hand. Felt the cool weight. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like memory. But I smiled. Because they thought they'd taken everything. But they didn't know me at all. I placed the twin brooch on the dresser. Next to the framed crayon drawing. The real one. My name wasn't forged there. It was written in love. In waxy purple crayon. The way it should have stayed. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. Saw the lines. The ache. The clarity. And whispered. They didn't just forget me. They erased me. But the outline they left behind was strong enough to rewrite herself. The morning after the envelope, I opened the windows. Let the air move through me. Summer had crept in overnight. But it felt like something else too. Not heat. Not heaviness. But space. Wide, unfamiliar space. I didn't rush. Didn't plan. I just moved. Quietly. Deliberately. Like someone lighting candles in a dark room, one by one. I started with the lake house. The one they always assumed would be theirs. Where my husband and I used to sit on the porch with coffee and secrets. Where my son learned to skip stones. The deed still had his name on it. Only as future inheritor. But inheritance requires care. And respect. I called the real estate lawyer. Transferred the deed to someone else. Maria. A woman I'd mentored years ago at the shelter. Raising 2 kids alone. Never asked for anything but always gave back. I didn't tell anyone. Didn't post about it. Just signed the papers. And mailed the key. She called me crying. I let her cry. I didn't. Because giving something away by choice feels nothing like having it taken from you. I took out the sewing box next. The one I hadn't touched in years. Inside, beneath faded threads and old needles. The brooch. Not the one they sold. The other one. Its twin. Quietly kept. Unloved. Unseen. I held it to the light. Watched it gleam. and pinned it to my blouse. It didn't feel like a relic. It felt like armor. I stared at myself in the mirror. Older. Sharper. Still here. And then, I opened a new bank account. In my maiden name. Barbara Louise Carter. Not Mom. Not Grandma B. Not Mrs. Wells. Just me. I had forgotten how that sounded. How I sounded. I transferred what was left into that name. Cut the strings to anything shared. Left the old account for the lawyer to sort. They could keep the voicemail password. There was nothing left in it but echoes. Then I did something I never thought I would. I mailed the framed drawing back. Not as a gift. Not as a threat. Just a return. I wrapped it in brown paper. Wrote a note. This belonged to me. You may keep the memory if you still have it. I walked to the post office alone. Didn't tell anyone where I was going. Didn't expect a reply. Because this was no longer about being heard. It was about being clear. Clarity isn't loud. It doesn't demand. It decides. I passed by her boutique on the way home. The window display was empty. A handwritten sign taped on the door. Closed for inventory. I stood there for a second, watching dust gather around a mannequin in a half-buttoned blouse. There, hanging near the register, was a photo. A family brunch. Mother's Day. My face missing. My chair gone. I turned away. Not bitter. Just done. That evening, I called Ruth my neighbor. The one who sent the text that started the unraveling. I invited her and 2 other women from book club for supper. Pot roast. Cornbread. Wine in the good glasses. The kind of table I used to set for people who never came. They brought laughter with them. And stories. And dessert. Store-bought pie, still warm with kindness. I poured wine. Wore the brooch. Used the plates I'd almost given away. No apologies. No pretending. And for the first time in a long while, I felt full. Not just fed. Seen. After they left, I washed the dishes by hand. Felt the steam on my skin. Felt present. Then I walked to the garden. Barefoot. Late. Moonlight silvered the grass. The roses had opened. Quiet. Unapologetic. Like me. I planted jasmine. Right there in the corner. Near the porch swing that used to creak beneath stories and sippy cups. The scent reminded me of my mother. Of who I was before anyone forgot me. I knelt in the dirt. Pressed the roots deep. Covered them with my own 2 hands. Not delicate. Not performative. Real. Because reclamation is not always loud. Sometimes it's a woman in her yard. Planting things that only she will water. I stood. Brushed off my knees. Went inside. The night was still. The air honest. And my life. Finally mine again. Would you have walked away, or taken everything back? What would you have chosen if you could plant peace with your own hands? It started with a voicemail. His voice soft. Like the boy I used to tuck in. Hey Mom. Just checking in. I know things have been strange. We'd like to talk. We. Not I. Not I'm sorry. Just we. As if apology was a shared task. Like dishes. Or taxes. I didn't delete the message. I didn't replay it either. It sat there for 3 days. Unopened. Unanswered. On the 4th, I saw her car slow in front of my house. She didn't park. Just circled the block. Twice. The 3rd time she stopped. Windows up. Lip caught between her teeth. Eyes scanning the porch. I didn't move from my chair. I was shelling peas. Old habit. 1 pod at a time. The bowl in my lap filling slowly with soft green. She stepped out. 1 heel wobbling on the gravel. Hair swept back. Not a strand out of place. Not a hair that looked like it had bent for anyone but herself. She didn't knock. She called my name instead. Twice. I heard the edge in her voice. Familiar. The kind that usually came with favors. Or blame. Barbara, we should talk. I set a shell aside. Picked up another. Split it down the middle. The sound a whisper. A soft decision. She waited. Hands crossed in front of her like she was praying. Or pretending. After a moment, she walked to the porch. Stopped at the stairs. Didn't come up. Didn't dare. I think maybe things got out of hand. She laughed like it was all a misunderstanding. As if my erasure was a scheduling error. A paperwork mix-up. She looked around. Saw the garden. The new jasmine growing. The wind chime I'd hung from the maple tree. Peaceful things. And I watched her realize she didn't belong in any of them. I miss you, she said. Voice shaky now. Eyes wet. Maybe for me, maybe for herself. Jacob misses you too. I paused. Not because I wanted to. but because I remembered the child who once called me Sunshine Hands. The little voice that used to sing my name like a melody. But this wasn't him. This was her. And her tears didn't move me. They arrived only when the ground began to shift under her feet. Not when she sold the brooch. Not when she filed false taxes in my name. Not when she deleted my seat at the table. But now, when the echo finally stopped answering, she stepped one foot on the first stair. I looked up, met her eyes, and I shook my head. Once. Slow. Final. She froze, dropped her hand, stepped back. I stood. Not angry. Not afraid. Just done. I walked inside, left the door open just long enough to feel the breeze push through. Then I closed it. No slam. No lock. Just the soft, unmistakable sound of something ending. 2 hours later, my son called. His voice cracked halfway through. I should have known better. I should have protected you. But I wasn't asking to be protected. I had needed to be seen. And he never did that. Not really. Not when I brought the blanket. Not when I waited at the restaurant. Not when I disappeared from their photos. He asked if he could stop by. Alone. I said no. Not with rage. Not with spite. Just peace. Because some doors, once closed, aren't locked, aren't boarded. They're just no longer yours. Later that night, I sat by the window. The same one I once stood behind on Mother's Day. Watching them raise glasses inside a restaurant where my name had been erased. And now here I was. Inside. Warm. Fed. Alone but not lonely. I poured a cup of tea. Chamomile. Let the steam kiss my cheek. And I felt it, not pride. Not revenge. But return. To myself. To my own skin. To a home that no longer waited for crumbs. For a moment, I pitied them. All that grasping. All that control. All that pretending. Then I remembered who I was. I was not a placeholder. Not a spare seat. Not a signature on a form. I was the woman who planted jasmine. Who wore her mother's brooch like a vow. Who fed strangers when family turned cold. The woman who stopped knocking. I stood. Took the voicemail. Pressed delete. Watched the screen fade back to silence. Then I turned off the light. And let the peace stay on. Do you believe quiet dignity is stronger than revenge? Would you have opened the door, or let the silence speak for you? I was never the echo. I was the voice they tried to silence. The seat they canceled became the space I reclaimed. It rained the next morning. Soft, steady. No thunder. Just that hush that makes the world feel rinsed. I stood by the back window with my coffee. The porch was slick. The garden soaked. But the jasmine stood tall. Rooted. Unbothered. I watched a single petal drop into the mud. Gracefully. No need to cling. Just fall and be. The wind chimes whispered above the door. 3 notes. 1 low, 2 light. Like a lullaby only I could hear. I pulled the blanket over my shoulders and walked to the kitchen. The table was clear now. No extra plates. No wrapped gifts waiting for hands that never opened them. Just my cup. Just my breath. Just now. I sat down. Not carefully. Not performative. Not waiting to be asked. I sat like I belonged. Because I did. For years I hovered. Over phone screens. Outside restaurants. On the edge of group photos. In doorways that never fully opened. But that seat? The one they canceled on Mother's Day? That was never my loss. It was theirs. Because I didn't need a chair to be honored. I needed air to breathe. So I built my own table. Not of polished oak. But of presence. Of women who laughed and passed wine and remembered how to say thank you. I planted that table with my own hands. 1 jasmine vine at a time. 1 real name on paper. 1 deleted voicemail. There was no music. No applause. Just a quiet room that no longer waited for noise. I looked around. At the photo on the mantel. Not of a wedding, but of the lake. Golden dusk. Water still. No people. Just peace. I had returned the things that didn't belong to me. The drawing. The debt. The version of myself that kept trying to earn her place. I didn't take revenge. Didn't take back the lake house. Didn't shame them publicly. But I took something better. Myself. I began to hum. Low. Without melody. Just sound. My sound. Then I stood. Slipped into my raincoat. Stepped outside. The sky hung heavy but not dark. The world smelled like wet stone and green beginnings. I walked down to the small bridge behind my garden. The one that crossed the trickling creek. In my hand, a key. The last of them. To their house. To their expectations. I held it between two fingers. Felt the weight of it. Not in ounces, but in years. Years I'd spent unlocking doors that only led to emptiness. Rooms without welcome. Smiles that waited for holidays and good lighting. I closed my eyes. Let the rain kiss my face. Then I opened my hand. And dropped the key. It fell without sound. Just disappeared beneath the surface. No ripples. No splash. Gone. I didn't stay to watch it sink. I didn't need proof. The letting go was enough. I turned. Walked back to my porch. Shoes muddy. Hair damp. Heart unburdened. I stepped inside. Kicked off my shoes. Hung up my coat. Lit a candle. Just because. I sat in the same chair they once thought I wasn't worth saving a seat for. Same spot. Different woman. This time, I didn't wait for anyone. Didn't rehearse forgiveness. Didn't flinch at the silence. I let it hold me. And as the flame flickered beside me, as the jasmine swayed outside my window, as the world went on without them, I exhaled. Long. Sure. Quiet. And whispered. I was never the echo. I was the voice they tried to silence. The seat they canceled became the space I reclaimed.